The new streaming service HBO Max is launching with a library of 10,000 hours of previously released content, and for now, a single new primetime style scripted series called Love Life. I'm Riley Chow of Gold Derby, here with creator and executive producer Sam Boyd. So, how does it feel to be the launch show on this new platform, the House of Cards of HBO Max, so to speak?
um, well, the thing that was exciting from the beginning was getting to work with the executives there that I, started working with on this show even before it was called HBO Max. And so for me, it sort of always began and ended with those people who I knew from the beginning, understood what this show was and loved it and supported, myself and Anna and my co-showrunner, this woman, Bridget Bedard, is incredible. Supported all of us in the show we wanted to make and sort of just not wanting to jinx it beyond that. I think as far as being their launch show, it's obviously amazing to sort of, have the show get out there in such a big way. But, at the end of the day, the show is the show and is kind of separate from whether it's, launching a service or not. So it's sort of, it's an honor, but it's also something I kind of put out of my head as much as I can.
Now, in the show, Anna Kendrick, she goes through a number of different boyfriends, goes through a lot of relatable situations, I guess. Is this all based on your own life?
No, a lot of it is, I've always kind of drawn from my own life for sure, and drawn from my relationships, but also my friends' lives and my friends' relationships, and just, stories I've heard, people I've known. And so, it ends up becoming this amalgam where it's not specific people necessarily, but you're kind of, starting with feelings that you've had or situations that you've been in, and usually pushing past that. There's definitely things in the show that happen to me, kind of little details, but it's definitely not, an autobiographical show. And if anything, I was kind of trying to separate the character from myself, because it is, we're trying to kind of remind people of their lives and make a show that feels realistic. And I think part of that for me is, if I make the character a man, then the character kind of automatically becomes the surrogate for myself, that there's no separation, and it just gets weird. So for me, it always was, I love writing female characters because it gives me the opportunity to, there's a gap where I have to try to put myself in another person's shoes and really understand their experience in a way that if it was sort of just one-to-one, that I was, writing a character that was like me, it would, I think, A, be boring, and B, just, I wouldn't have the same fun with it as a writer.
How did Anna Kendrick come on board this project? Did she come with producer Paul Feig?
No, so we had from the beginning, I started working with Paul Feig on it and developing it, and that was great. And to be honest, it was through our agency CAA who introduced me to Paul, my agent. Read the script and thought that Paul would like it, and sent it to his company, and then we started developing it with them, and Anna the same way, who's a client there as well. So it was sort of this thing where, she and Paul had obviously worked together on A Simple Favor last year and love each other. And so that was, great. But I think she got a hold of the script and wanted to do it. And that was really exciting to hear. And we kind of just, went from there. I was very lucky.
So the show is so new. It's called Love Life. Is that first word in the title ever supposed to be pronounced kind of as a verb instead of an adjective, like love life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for me, there's a lot of meanings to it, and my favorite titles always mean, many things, if not, at least more than one thing. And so from the beginning, it was sort of like, okay, yeah, we're looking at a person's love life, so it's called Love Life. And yeah, it's a kind of directive with this verb, telling, people to love their lives. And also for me, especially as we got it on its feet and made the show, it was about, the push and pull between those two words as separate ideas, love and life, and looking at a person's life through their loves, and looking at, love as a way to understand a person's life, and the kind of, the balance of all of that as we explore these different relationships, and especially as we start to, later in the season, explore a few non-romantic relationships, being able to just kind of broaden that. So it's just ultimately, it's not as much about a woman looking for love as it is just about a person looking for connection, you know?
I'm curious about the title card that we see in the show. I'm
Yeah,
wondering what's going on there. It's kind of like this wavy, colorful line. I think it changes color
right.
between episodes. Reminds me of the flickering light in the Tree of Life.
Oh, cool. Wow. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think, those were designed by a graphic designer named Teddy Blanks, who I've followed his work for a long time and always been a fan of his. And I reached out to him to see if he wanted to, come on and design our graphics. And I was lucky enough that he wanted to. And so from the beginning, I think he and I were talking about wanting to do something short and sweet. These episodes are so dense, and you're kind of, you're telling the story of a single, an entire relationship in a single episode, and you're kind of cramming so much in that the idea of like an extended title sequence, like a minute or a 2-minute thing, there's just not time for it. And so we wanted something kind of short and sweet that would tell your brain like, okay, it's time to watch this show again, but also something that could kind of evolve and surprise you, as the design changes or as the colors change throughout the episodes, and as the character evolves and the story evolves. And really it also was just kind of wanting to see what he came up with. We had kind of talked about gradients as an idea, and then he pitched this design, and I just thought it was so beautiful and just unlike anything I'd seen. And we kind of just went from there.
You mentioned your co-showrunner, Bridget Bedard, earlier. Can you
Yeah.
tell me about that collaboration, how she came on board, and kind of how you distribute the labor, I guess? Like, are you head
Yeah.
writer and she's more producing, or what's the
Right.
setup?
Yeah, Bridget's someone I had been a fan of for a long time, and I loved obviously her work on Rami last year, but her work on Transparent, and even she wrote for Mad Men and has such an incredible had such an incredible career. And I think from the beginning, I always knew that because I had never made a TV show before, I directed an independent film, but having never made a show, I knew that I wanted a co-showrunner because I didn't know how to make a TV show. And I think, a lot of what I try to do is know my own limitations and collaborate with other people who can make the thing, as good as it can be. And so I always wanted someone in that role. I think I always looked at, Girls, which is a show I loved, and looked at Lena Dunham, who had, made a film and then made that show, and, show run it with Jenny Connor and the relationship they had. And that was the model for me. So as soon as we started kind of putting, the writers' room together, we started, meeting people who are showrunners, and Bridget was, the person that I really wanted to work with, and that I was lucky enough to get to work with. And as far as our kind of division of labor, I think she and I, worked extremely well together. I think we balance each other out really well, where, I think we're both, really involved in the writing, but she also is she's such a good writer and such a good producer. And she's just an amazing filmmaker. But I think as we were making the show, especially, like maybe before we started shooting, I was in the writer's room with her, and we were kind of running the writer's room together, and they're, really breaking the season and figuring out the stories. But once we were shooting, it's this big train that's left the station, and you're still writing, and you're still, especially in this case where, we're casting, we sort of set the challenge for ourselves of essentially having to cast a new co-lead every episode, and needing to, have the scripts ready to get those actors to, figure all that out. And there was just so much that it was really helpful for her and I to be able to divide labor as far as like, covering set versus being in the room, and vice versa. And because I directed the pilot, I was able to be really hands-on, on set, and as we actually, shot the stuff, and Bridget ran the writer's room a lot, but also sort of, she was also on set all the time, and I was also in the room as much as I could be. And so it's sort of a yin yang almost of these different responsibilities, and us kind of, just dividing and conquering as much as we can to get it all done, because there's so much to do in a situation like that.
Yeah, you directed the pilot and the finale. So can you tell me what is the look of the show?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know you talked about having interviewed our cinematographer Adrian Correa, who's so talented, and from the beginning, he and I were talking about, the phrase that I used was elegant performance capture, and this idea of wanting the show to be beautiful and feel real, and have great production value and all that, but also never wanting that aesthetic get in the way of the performances and what we were trying to get out of the actors and out of the chemistry between them. And so ways about working backward from shot or design the way we're building this scene so that, we're essentially just setting up a kind of catch-all to be able to get whatever performance we're after, what you want out of the actor. But there was a hit, crazy dolly shot we were also doing at the same time, so it was possible, and again, wanting it to be beautiful and wanting it to be elegant, but always with the priority being the performances and the sort of capturing of those performances, and thinking about, filmmakers like Billy Wilder and Richard Linklater and, Sofia Coppola and, all the directors that I've looked up to who are kind of less flashy in the way that they direct, but you always feel it, and it's always, beautiful still.
I'm wondering, have you seen the show Devs?
I haven't yet. Jin Ha, who's on Devs and is also in Love Life, is such an amazing actor, and I really, really enjoyed working with him. But I've unfortunately been, we're still like mixing the episodes and recording ADR and stuff. So I'm very behind on kind of everything. I haven't seen anything since like Succession season 2. But Devs is top of my list of things I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, I mentioned it because that's the only other thing that I've seen him in. And in both that show and this show, he's kind of just playing the boyfriend, but he's
Right.
also, so different in Love Life. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, what was really exciting was to build this character in a vacuum. When I wrote the pilot, imagining Augie and who I wanted that character to be, and just knowing that we needed someone as talented as Jin to be able to step into that character. And I think, Jin is such an amazing and, intelligent and sort of diligent person and performer, and is sort of so well researched and thoughtful, and and being able to have him step into Augie when it's different from, who he plays in Devs, and it's different from who he is as a person in real life. And, that was really fun for us.
Yeah, so in this show, you've got that Asian boyfriend, and you also have an Asian best friend. And
Right.
in real life, I feel like that's something that I see maybe more often than not here in
Right.
Vancouver anyway, but it's not
Right.
something that I ever see on TV. So can you talk about
Right.
that?
Yeah, I think, for us and all of us making this show, it was really important to us to have the world feel as, realistic as possible, which means, having a breadth of, diverse actors and all of these amazing performances, we were able to performers we were able to work with. And I think, especially with what you were specifically asking about, which is having, Augie, who's the love interest in the first episode, and the character's Korean American, just like the actor Jin Ha is. And then, Darby's best friend is played by Zoe Chow, who's just the best, and she plays, Sarah. I think there is also, you see so often like an element of tokenism where you feel like someone said, oh, we have to cast this kind of person in this part, and there was something that felt fresh to me about being able to, or just right and nice about being able to cast 2 Asian American actors in those parts and not have it be part of the story, and just have it be that, this is about, Anna's character, but these are people in her life, and these are just, the people that they happen to be, and wanting that to just feel more realistic and hopefully be something that people hadn't seen as much in television before.
So we're coming up on the Emmys, and Love Life is just sneaking in there, qualifying in the last
Right.
week, I guess, of eligibility. And HBO Max is entering the show as a comedy series as opposed to a limited series, even though it's kind of the same structure as American Horror Story with hopefully a different cast and
Yeah.
story every season. So I'm wondering if you were involved in that decision making.
That stuff like that is above my head. That happens at the network, but I think
Yeah.
we definitely all talked about it, and there were arguments, or not arguments, but sort of reasons to go one way or the other for each option, and at the end of the day you have to pick one. And I think we're so proud of how funny the show is and how great Anna's performance is in it, and it just felt like that was kind of the right category for us, even though we do kind of we reset every season, but we also, it's still kind of a cheat too, because we follow a new main character from season to season, but we're still kind of staying within that same world. So as opposed to American Horror Story, where it's a total reset, or True Detective, many of these anthology series that are so great, we're kind of trying to split the difference between a traditional ongoing series and an anthology or a limited one, where you sort of still have the same feelings and the same world and the same atmosphere and style from season to season. You're just following a new person's love life.
And do you know what episode or episodes you're submitting for the writing category?
I think we submitted the pilot, and then I believe we also are submitting episode 8, which is one of my favorites and one of Bridget's favorites, and that's one that explores Darby's relationship with her best friend Sarah, who we've talked about, played by Zoe Chow, and that was one where the more we saw Zoe on set, and the more she was just, her chemistry with Anna was unbelievable, and everything we wrote for her, she just knocked out of the park. Being able to kind of see that story through and build that episode for that character, to learn more about her, and to take it to hopefully this really unexpected place, and especially with the ending that the episode has, it just felt like the script that was written by one of our writers, Alec Liebegot, was just one of the more memorable pieces of writing that we had this season, for sure.
All right, Sam. Well, thanks very much for taking the time to chat. I can't wait for people to see this show. And to our viewers, you can check out our other interviews with Emmy contenders on our YouTube channel, and go to goldlivery.com to make your own Emmy predictions.